for everybody. I know it's a big week for everyone in the Polkadot ecosystem. We've been waiting quite a while. I know Betty and Brian have been working on Acala for well over 2 years, and Gavin and the team at Parity have been working on Polkadot for, I think, over 4 years. So long time coming for everything that's about to happen on Saturday with the first 5 parachains launching. So the goal of this call really is to give everyone an overview of what to expect with the launch. Betty's got a little construction there, I think. What to expect with the launch of Acala, what the timelines might look like, give you a little bit of background, just reminders on kind of basics around what Acala is. Before we get into that, though, let's start with introductions. I guess Betty and Brian, you guys can go ahead, and then I'll get into the slides.
Yeah, guys, I can start. Hi, everyone. That is Brian, the co-founder and CTO of Acala, as well as Kura. So I have been also early contributors to the substrate and Polkadot, as well as currently the biggest external contributors as well. Yeah, I'm also a Polkadot ambassador and also run some courses teaching substrate as well.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening to anyone in different time zones. Yeah, so this is Betty, calling in from Auckland, New Zealand. I'm also one of the co-founders of Acala. It's actually been close to 3 years of, a few of us started out the project, and until today, we are very, very close to launch the network. So very excited today to share a little bit more about the project and where we are heading with everybody. Back to you, Dan.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to share my screen and go ahead and get started. And we've got a little bit of a maybe an unexpected start to this. As you know, we've got a huge launch process coming up with the launch of Acala, and Acala is launching an entire blockchain. We've built this blockchain customized specifically for DeFi, and when the EVM launches on Acala, we'll be providing this environment for all these DeFi projects, NFTs, and so on to launch on top of this chain that we've built. But just wanted to compare the launch process to the process of launching a spaceship, just to kind of set context for what we're getting into here. When you go to launch a spaceship, there's obviously a lot of time spent on research and development, on planning out the process for launching this spaceship. And then people like maybe the team in Russia or the team in China or the US that's launching a ship, they have to actually contract a service provider that's going to help with that launch. And then there's a process that goes into it, including actually shipping the spaceship to the launch location on some kind of a truck, and then using a crane to lift up that spaceship and prepare everything for launch. Then there's the process of fueling the spaceship, then moving into the actual day of launch. So initiating the motors and the propellers that are going to actually get this spaceship into the atmosphere. Then, of course, initiating actual liftoff and getting this space shuttle into space. But then that's not the end either. Once you get into space, there's this process of cutting off the engine. There's the part where everything kind of flies off the side of the spaceship and everything detaches, getting into this second stage of ignition, and then moving into what they call the third stage ignition and the de-spin process, entering cruise phase, and then finally this phase of ongoing maintenance and improvement. I know that was a very quick overview of what it's like to launch a spaceship, but this is meant to draw kind of parallels to what we're about to experience with the launch of Acala. Acala is going to be launching several things. It's not a single launch. On Saturday is step 1 of many. So on Saturday is what we call the genesis, or the very first block that will be produced for the Acala blockchain. But then if you know a little bit more about what we're building with Acala, we have other DeFi products or primitives, like a decentralized exchange, a stablecoin, a liquid dot staking product, and EVM. So as you can see, it's not just one Acala launch. It's actually the Acala launches, plural, or the Acala launch process. So this is what we're about to start on Saturday, and this will go into Q1 2022, where all these different things are going to be going live, and Brian and the engineering team are going to be going through lots of efforts to make sure everything is properly tested and launched as we get into next year. So a lot of exciting things to come. This call today is really going to help walk you through what to expect with our launch process. That will, similar to launching a spaceship, will also include a lot of various steps. So the agenda for today, Betty's gonna, or I guess Betty and myself will give a kind of a background about what Acala, how Acala kind of came about, how the team met, where the kind of origins of the project are. Then we'll go through some background about what Acala is, some just kind of refresher for everyone. Then get into the launch roadmap, including a link for everyone to kind of bookmark to basically something that you can follow as we go through this launch process to keep you up to date on where we are. And then I see we've already got about 51 questions submitted at the bottom where it says ask a question. So if you do have questions, this is kind of where we're going to be pulling from questions at the end. And if you also, maybe you don't have a question, but you can upvote questions that you would like to see us answer, and those will kind of rise to the top as we get to the questions. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Betty, I'm actually going to have you maybe go through this slide and just give a quick introduction to the origin of Acala and kind of how everything got started.
Yeah, for sure. It was probably close to 3 years ago. And we were kind of exploring the space, looking for the right platform to build a decentralized finance application. And then the group of us, the co-founders, we were diehard decentralist, meaning that we all believe one day, sooner or later, Web3 or decentralization is going to take over every single field in the world, mostly because we saw how the Web2 world or the existing industry, how concentrated the resources, the data, as well as power into only a few organizations or individuals. Whenever there's new startup, new ideas, they are either get completely absorbed into this centralized agencies, or they just get acquired or crushed. This happened everywhere globally, not just in one region. So we kind of felt that there needs to be something to be done at a very fundamental, like very low technical level to be able to achieve the goal of giving back the power to individuals, not just meaning individual person, but also means individual smaller teams, smaller companies, or a group of people who just want to innovate and build stuff that kind of benefit for more people. This is really the movement of Web3 to using the cryptographic technology to enable the trustless mechanism to give power back to individuals. And then back then, we saw finance as would be the first industry to break through, basically bring the crypto into the mass market. And we, a few of us actually had background in finance as well as work in the industry and connections. So that's why we kind of like started Acala in the field of DeFi and till today. So I'm sure we're going to share a little bit more of Acala's vision and where we're heading a bit later. But yeah, that's how we got started.
Awesome. Thank you. So as Betty mentioned, some of the co-founders, this is the team of 4 co-founders. So you've got Betty and Brian here on the call, Ru Tao also in the New Zealand office, and then you've got Fu Yao who heads up Poke Wallet and helps lead our team in China. We've also got now around getting close to 40 people. We're actually growing pretty quickly and have teams all over the world. So if you do have an interest in joining our team, we're always hiring. We've got a lot of jobs open on the engineering and product side. And even if there's not a job listed, just go ahead and submit the kind of open application and we'd be happy to review that. Some of our backers, Coinbase, Pantera, DCG, Polychain, a lot of great friends on the slide here that kind of helped us get to where we are. And of course, a lot of you on the call are probably participants in the Crowdloan. So you guys are all considered kind of network owners now, and will very soon be owners of this live ACA and Acala network. In a nutshell, Acala is a Ethereum compatible smart contract platform that has been customized or optimized for DeFi. And this application platform will help DeFi applications scale to Polkadot or build natively on Polkadot and Acala. So what that actually looks like is we've got a layer 1 blockchain. So this is the equivalent to Ethereum and Solana and Terra and the other layer 1s that are kind of proliferating right now. Below that is Polkadot, which provides the security for our blockchain. So the proof of stake of Polkadot actually secures Acala. It's part of the reason why we work so hard to earn the slot on Polkadot and earn the right to launch. And then cross-chain. So we natively get cross-chain communication with every other parachain similar to us by connecting to Polkadot. And then within our blockchain, we've built and kind of customized all these special products. So our stablecoin, everything kind of is built around. And then we have a swap or decentralized exchange, a liquid staking product. These are all things that are going to be going live going into Q1. The EVM is one of the more special parts about Acala. We've actually taken quite a bit of effort to fully customize our EVM environment to be compatible between Ethereum and Substrate. So the EVM is something that Gavin Wood created back when he coded Ethereum, and the EVM has obviously had so much success launching on all these different layer 1 chains. But we decided to take it one step further and allow the Ethereum environment to fully interact with Gavin's second invention, which was Substrate, which allows all this customization at the blockchain level. So you have, instead of just being confined to what is possible on Ethereum, we are basically combining the best of these two worlds with Ethereum and Substrate, so that teams can kind of enjoy some of the new functionality that Substrate offers. So since the environment is Ethereum compatible, users who are maybe used to using MetaMask on Ethereum will have the same experience on Acala, but then developers can leverage some of the underlying Substrate benefits. So allowing users to pay gas fees in any token, not just requiring ACA for our platform, on-chain automatic scheduler, and then unlimited customization. And what I mean by this is when you're a development team building on Acala, what the blockchain below can do is unlimited. So if you are a team building on Acala's EVM and you realize that you have some kind of a blocker or maybe a wish list item that you would like to see done at the blockchain level, you can actually talk to people like Betty and Brian and basically make a new request for a new feature at the blockchain level. This is basically like a team on Ethereum asking Vitalik and the crew to update Ethereum, which we all know requires a fork. On Acala, we can basically continuously update the blockchain and provide more and more functionality for developers building in the EVM environment. Brian is kind of our lead engineer, and he is also going to make a couple comments here about the EVM and maybe where we are right now with what we're building.
Yeah, thanks, Dan, for the intro. Yeah, so currently we are launching the Mandala testnet TC7, our latest testnet, which already includes all the EVM solutions there. We are still in the phase of opening up the testnet, so it's currently in a private beta, sharing to a few partners, but will be later on open this to public, so anyone can try to deploy the smart contracts there. So it takes quite a long time for us to make our EVM solution developed and released. One of the reasons is that the Ethereum is running there for many years, and we have also observed that there are a lot of limitations or feature requests, or it's like people want to do a lot of improvement on Ethereum. There are tons of EIP proposals out there, but a lot of them are moving very slowly. So we figured while we launch a new blockchains, we can probably do slightly better, thanks to the advanced architecture of the substrate that allow us to do a lot of things that simply is not possible in Ethereum. So that's one of the reasons why we did a lot of additional customizations to improve it, while stay the maximum capability with existing toolchains as well as the existing Ethereum Solidity codes. So taking some examples is that only substrate, or if you're Polkadot or Kusama users, you will know there's such a thing called essential deposit. It is somewhat something that makes usability a bit confusing and complicated, but it's a critical component to make sure the blockchain is actually scalable. And otherwise, the blockchain will have the dust account issues that a lot of accounts have the tiny bit of dust amount of tokens in the account that is so small that it's impossible to use them. So they will just sit there in blockchain forever, using the storage, providing no values. So that's why the Polkadot have this exchange deposit. So and also most of the parachains will also have the similar things. So we are bringing this mechanism to the EVM as well. Otherwise, we're going to have the same dust account issue inside our EVM, even if we don't implement this mechanism. So this obviously breaks some capabilities with existing tools. So some additional work is required. But like for example, if the dust exchange deposit is low enough, it shouldn't be any deal breakers, because people don't usually send one way of ETH every day. It's just some extreme edge cases might be different. So that's just one example of some additional work we are doing to make sure our blockchain, our EVM solution is future-proof as well as compatible with existing work. So this will take some time for auditing. We are in the final phase of our latest stage auditing. So we're really expecting a new audit reports covering our EVM solutions coming out in a few weeks' time. And then we're going to launch it in the Mandala TC7, the testnet, and make it public for the users as well as developers to try it in next few weeks' time. And then after all the testing is good, after we're gathering enough user feedbacks as well as feedbacks from developers, we can see if we need to do some additional adjustments to our capability solution, or we can just launch it on the Kurura and then later launch it on Acala.
Awesome. So lots to come. If you're a developer on the call or a team kind of waiting to be building on RVM, just follow our channels. Twitter, I think there's no doubt it'll be posted there. And then our Discord is kind of the core of our community. So things will be communicated there. Betty, if you want to go ahead with the next slide, and then as soon as you're ready to jump into the roadmap, then maybe you can just switch your screen and share the Notion.
Yeah, sure. So from the very get-go of building Acala, we want to create something special in the space. So ultimately, where we want to head to is really bring the benefit of crypto or blockchain to the masses without them even knowing they are using crypto or blockchain. And many people, claim they're trying to do that, but I think we are doing it slightly differently. I think everyone is trying their best and bring ingenuity into the field. So how are we going about achieving this is like the following. So we kind of believe that as the technology evolves, it will tend towards specialization. So you see this in almost every field in tech, right? For example, if you want to, build the best self-driving cars like Tesla and others, you have to own the full stack, not only the hardware, the software, but also the computer chips as well. So as iPhone, the older example, where if you want to build the best app experience, you need to own the hardware. So in our domain, we want to own the full stack. So in order to build the best DeFi or financial experience and reconstruct the new sort of economy and financial industry, we need to own the blockchain stack from the bottom to top. And this allows us to do a few things. Number one, we would be able to customize for real world use cases. So the few examples that folks already given, like gas fees, token economics customization, and things like that, you would not be able to do in a normal blockchain, but we would be able to accommodate to any of those use cases. Because if you think about it, when there's institutions comes along or real users that transacting on a daily basis, if they're from Europe, why would they pay in a weird token. They would just want to settle in euro. Or if they are from Singapore or from US, they probably just want to settle in their local dollars, right? And this is a very subtle thing that we built in very, very early on. You can pay gas fees in any stablecoin or any tokens, so that we can actually meet the requirements of the real world adoption. So for Acala, so how we are achieving it in a way that like a sandwich, right? So we are building ourselves as a DeFi infrastructure, and then ultimately be able to integrate back into the real world, the fintech world, institutions, etc. And then the infrastructure that we provide are sort of the three things. First of all, we are a blockchain, layer 1 blockchain, and then we built a Web3 native stablecoin. You can think about stablecoin in the crypto field as a decentral bank. So we're basically building a Federal Reserve, if you like the analogy, on Polkadot, basically the Web3, and then folks can use their digital assets to leverage and then also to release liquidity to fund and also to empower secondary applications of financial protocols on top of it. Things like commercial banks, lending and borrowing, things like margin trading, things like other type of yield products, variable, fixed, structured, unstructured products, and that all of those has to start from the decentral bank or the stablecoin that we built out, and it's usually the hardest and the most difficult thing to actually bootstrap. So we built it as part of the blockchain to be able to provide the rest of the ecosystem to build on top of it. So that's one big thing of Acala is we are the stablecoin of Polkadot. We are the stablecoin of Web3, decentralized, cross-chain by nature. So that's number one. And then the second thing we offer is the platform, so the open protocol. That's the middle layer of the sandwich, if you like the analogy. So in the open protocol layer, we have what both Brian and Dan already explained is the EVM platform. This is where you can imagine many of the ecosystem projects, or almost like anyone can come in and build out the product variety, any product, and composable in an open and permissionless manner. And then the top layer of our sandwich is integration back into fintech. And this is like the way that we think slightly differently from other angles is because of our vision and our ambition. We already have partners like current.com. So they are one of the examples that we share with folks there in the fintech field. They cater for a specific consumer segment in the US with 3 million consumers using their banking application. And then they are able to integrate their banking core into Acala's DeFi infrastructure. Right. So essentially, those 3 million consumers will be using some sort of DeFi products packaged in a way that cater for their needs without even knowing Acala exists. Right. So that's the ultimate sort of goal for us, is to be able to do that sort of integration. And current.com is only one example, but we are working with folks in the e-commerce field, also in other sort of jurisdiction and also fintech and things like that, to be able to complete that sort of, so those folks are integrating from the top down, and then we are building our DeFi infrastructure from the bottom up. And then also one of the main reasons they chose us is the ability to customize and cater for real world needs and be able to upgrade, right? So some of the real world needs that you are not possible. It's impossible to predict before you meet the real world use case. So we have the ability, when we take a use case, we are able to customize at the chain level, and then make it available in the smart contract platform, available to any protocol builders. And then that will enable the UX as well as the scalability to be integrated back into the real world. So that is the sort of the approach that we are taking right now. Hopefully, with along that stack, you can see we are the infrastructure provider, but we are also the integrator back into fintech and the institutional world or the real world. But in the middle, we are relying on building an ecosystem of innovators to build out different type of protocol and product suite, so that the end user can have whatever they need to suit their needs. So this is obviously quite a big and ambitious sort of goal. So we are not just doing it alone. You can see our backers, many of them are actually take out their sleeves and they are working with us, building the product along the way. And also relying on a team of, right now it's like close to 40 people in the team, spread across 5 different continents. So don't think a launch today and then launch the token within the 30 days is going to be the end of the R&D of the Acala team. The research and development will continue until we reach the goal of what I just described, because you can see launching the network itself is just a bare baseline of the Acala network. With what I've just described and the bigger picture that Dan showed earlier, it actually requires many of the building blocks continue to be built and also release and upgrade on the chain, and then so that we can actually achieve the goal. So all of you guys here today listening, you are not just early adopter, you are the super early adopter, basically at the very, very beginning of all of this revolution that will happen in the next wee while. It's not going to happen, overnight. Many of these things requires both building out the ecosystem as well as increasing the maturity of the platform itself, as well as the partnership back into the institution. But in any case, you can think about the Acala network or the ACA is reconstructing the financial infrastructure of today. So each one of you, well, especially those of you participating in Crowdloan, you are holding, ACA basically in a way have control of the future, the economic policy, and then how the network is going to evolve in the future as well. But I think we'll get into a little bit more of that later. So so I've kind of mentioned current.com, but we're also working horizontally with other DeFi protocols as well, because first and foremost, our native sort of group of segment that we are serving is the DeFi folks, including you guys, right? So the crypto users. And we're working with Compound and also many other protocols, actually. They will either integrate or deploy on top of Acala. So collectively, hopefully generating some interesting use case for you guys to play and experiment. At the same time, we are working towards a much longer, a bigger vision to integrate back into the mass market. So so I think something that's also relevant today is I saw the number one voted in question there is how Acala is different, right? So the stuff that I mentioned, along with what Brian and Dan mentioned regarding EVM, those are product-wise, platform-wise, and functionality. They are quite differentiated. I hope you actually get the idea. If not, feel free to ask a question again, and then we can go into a bit more detail. But another aspect definitely is you can look at Acala as a sovereign network or a sovereign nation, a sovereign entity that has a life of its own, have wealth of its own. And of course, with you guys, then have sovereign stewardship of its own. So how that play out is obviously the stewardship is realized by the ACA tokens, right? With the ACA token, you have a stewardship of the network and probably will also down the track enjoy the wealth that it generates. And then the sovereign network and the sovereign wealth part of it, we already made a start, right? So I think some of you here participated in the Build Acala event. Knowingly or unknowingly, you have helped build the wealth, the initial wealth of Acala. So through the Build Acala event, we have acquired close to 2 million DOT in the process. So all of those, within the next 30 days, there will be a donation ceremony. They will all be loaded onto the Acala Treasury. So basically, this is network controlled value. So the Acala Treasury is network control value that collectively stored by the ACA holders, and all of this is protocol owned. So some of the things happening in DeFi today is very interesting, like liquidity mining, like folks are giving out incentives to attract liquidity and also help people to trading volumes and things like that. But a lot of those are not loyal liquidity, right? You can see them used to shift from one protocol to another protocol. And now with many layer ones are launching, the liquidity are shifting from one layer one to another layer one. And they're just doing the rounds, right? So very, very early on. So we wrote the white paper about 2.5 years ago on sovereign wealth fund, maybe 2 years ago, on sovereign wealth fund. So this is an idea of collectively, right? Everyone who's holding ACA now, collectively, we have to think about Acala network more like a nation, right? So how do we responsibly run the nation so that not just today, tomorrow, 7 days time, we are going to have liquidity. We are going to have enough activity to generate wealth, but think about in a much longer time span. In a white paper, we mentioned 6 years, but you can extrapolate that for much longer term when you run a nation. And this requires you to consolidate and also acquire the wealth on the blockchain itself. It's network control value or the nation-owned wealth in a way, right? So this is basically the Acala Treasury. The starting point right now, congratulate everybody, is 2 million dots that we will have, and then in the time following, this dot on chain can be used to be deployed into liquidity to generate yield by participating in liquid staking. That is like 15 or 16% yield on all of those dot that we have. And also, it also requires all of us stewardship to see how we can build on top of this wealth that we have, so that in 2 years' time, when there's another crowd loan, we no longer need to give out our ACA. ACA is fixed supply, right? There's only a limited number of ACA right now, but we can use this wealth on chain to be able to bid for a slot ourselves, and also be continue to using this to deploy on chain to bootstrap the liquidity, as well as generating further wealth for the chain and everyone involved. So so I would only say that much for that today, but we can dwell into a bit more later. So the next few slides actually goes into detail of each of our built-in protocols. I won't go into very, very deep details, but I've kind of mentioned how Acala is actually differentiated. The first and foremost, we are the decentralized Federal Reserve, and Acala Dollar is the central piece of it. So everyone today, you have to take away the Acala Dollar is where we are going to focus a lot of attention and trying to bootstrap it for the native stablecoin for Polkadot, as well as the entire Web3. And by native, I mean it can actually use the native digital assets in this Web3. So that includes DOT, also the LDOT derivatives, as well as LCDOT, that for you guys who participate in a Crowdloan, that's the liquid Crowdloan dot, can also be used to generate Acala Dollar, as well as cross-chain assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum bridges. Once they are established, those assets can also be used as collaterals. The reason for that, the magic is those assets continue to accrue value, but then you can actually generate a dollar for liquidity, and also the secondary leverage, as well as yield generation opportunity. Those are the commercial banks or the money markets or whatever protocol built on top of this can kind of leverage. So so this is the central piece for Acala. And the other protocols like LiquidDot, as well as the DEX in the next slide, they are basically in a supporting role for the Acala Dollar to succeed. So the LiquidDot itself generates yield in a trustless way. So you can very easily, with one click, right, and trustlessly staking for Polkadot, and you are earning the Polkadot yield, while you can actually use this liquid token to participate in all the DeFi activities happen on Acala, including generating Acala Dollar and also some other trading activities as well. So yeah, so I won't go into too much there on the swap. That's quite straightforward. And yeah. So I think to today, thanks to everyone here, actually, we've got over 800,000 community members globally, and we've been quite, balanced in terms of the, the West and the Asian, Pacific, Europe markets. So I think in order to bring all of this idea as well as ecosystem and community to a mass market, all of each one of you community members will be very, very helpful and supportive along the way. And right now is only the beginning. And then, so we've already launched one of the network like Karura on Kusama. And then I would actually say that launch right now is only at the ground zero. We are waiting for the EVM to be launched so that we can transition from a local economy into a global economy. Once the EVM is up, and you will see very soon there's an announcement on a multi-chain bridge, and then that will actually bring foreign assets and also our local assets in and out. So we'll be one of the main hub to kind of export DOT and KSM and also import foreign assets into the ecosystem, as well as many trading activities as well. But yeah, so as Dan mentioned, it's like a rocket launch. There's stages when things are ready and happening. So yeah. Right. So for parachain, I think a few things we can be pretty proud of, and also I think you should be pretty proud of, is we actually had over 80,000 on-chain community contributors. I think many of you here are one of those. But if you actually participated through a centralized exchange, thank you also, because you're one of the close to 200,000 contributors totally for our Crowdloan. So that's a great distribution, and that's a very good start. Although it's a tiny number, compared to the real world, but I think anything will start from a small group. Folks who actually believe in the vision, and then also trying in different ways bring your talent to help us to also achieve the vision of bringing crypto and DeFi into the real world. So that's a really cool thing to see. And then I think the second cool thing to see, not so much how much DOT we raised, but how much useful DOT everybody contributed and raised. So out of the 32 mil DOT that raised, actually 80% of those are useful DOT in the form of liquid Crowdloan DOT, right? So imagine if you lock up 30+ million of DOT and they're sitting there for nothing for 2 years. It's a bit boring, isn't it? We're in the field of DeFi and innovation, so managed to turn 80% of those. I think it's 24 million DOT into the liquid form. So I also see, one of the top questions is how we can also use LCDOT in Acala. So the first thing is those liquidity are released. So you are holding, you will be distributed the LCDOT token within 30 days, and they are liquid upfront. And then with that liquid, well, you can transfer it, you can trade it. And then also I mentioned you can generate stablecoin on top of it. Those are just bare minimum that we will provide very early on. And then as the EVM opens, you can imagine there are money markets and other protocols that will be deployed. And then LCDOT will be tradable, in various different places as well. So right. So, and then as for some of the critical timelines, actually, you can actually see the exact time when the parachain genesis will happen on the Polkadot JS. There's a very accurate timeline there because it depends on the block time. So sometimes it changes the date, because initially we thought it's going to be December 17th, but the block time changes, so it's December 18th now for the genesis. And yeah, so once that genesis launches, I think we get about 96 weeks for our parachain lease. And then at the end of it, there will be, we're gonna hopefully we're going to have enough DOT on chain to acquire another slot to continue the lease so that Acala network can kind of continue its operation. And then after we've done that, I think that once the lease expires, then we'll be able to take back all the DOT and then return it to all the LCDOT holders by then. So yeah. Okay, so Acala launch roadmap, and is it back to you, Dan, or is it still me?
Either way.
I think you can carry on this slide, and then I can
cool.
go into a bit more detail later. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to now get into, I think, what people have been waiting for, which is more details around the launch. I'm sorry, the bottom left one is blocked by our videos, but I'll explain. So just to set some expectations here, one thing that is unique about the Polkadot ecosystem and building a parachain on another blockchain connected to Polkadot is that it's not just up to us to basically launch Acala and do whatever we want. There's a lot of dependencies on Polkadot because we rely on Polkadot to do certain things in order for us to complete certain parts of our launch. So one thing to be aware of is that we're going to be moving, of course, as quickly as we can, but sometimes there's dependencies on the Polkadot engineering team at Parity and other development shops contributing to Polkadot. One of the examples of this is cross-chain messaging, which you might hear referred to as XCM or cross-chain messaging. This is something that we're going to be dependent on, and this is something that helps enable certain things like our liquid DOT staking in other aspects of the launch. Number two on the right, top right, Acala and Polkadot. If you're into the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystem, I'm sure you've heard us talk about Polkadot being kind of like this high-grade, almost bank-like security, whereas Kusama is meant to move fast, take risks, and be kind of where you can experiment. So Polkadot and Acala in our launch, just be prepared for us to be very careful and thoughtful about every aspect of the launch, the security, the sequence of the launch, and things like this. It's going to be a conservative launch process. Bottom left, Polkadot has a governance cycle of 28 days, which is about a month. This is 4 times slower than Kusama. So because of that, in order to push certain upgrades through and for governance changes to go through, it just takes a little bit longer on Polkadot. So that also will impact not only our launch, but every parachain launch on Polkadot. It just more conservative, moves a little bit slower because the value of everything on Polkadot is about 10 times bigger than everything on Kusama. And then last on the right, timelines. So we're going to do the best we can to give you approximate timelines, and we'll talk about phases of the launch. But these timelines we're going to do the best we can to estimate, but just be aware that these timelines, we're talking about software development where things can change. There may be new issues that come up or things that we didn't expect. So software development timelines always are shifting. So if you've noticed, Polkadot and Kusama never commit to exact timelines. We also have never committed to an exact date for any launch, and we never will in the future. That's very intentional because we never know exactly what day it will launch. So don't expect like pre-announcements or saying like, oh, we're going to launch this on January X. It's always going to be, hey, the launch is coming soon. Here's roughly when you can expect it. And then as soon as the launch is ready, we will simply launch it and announce it. And when you see the announcement, it'll be ready to use. So a few things just as background to expect when it comes to our launch. A couple other things. So here's some key kind of events to look forward to in the next month and in the next quarter. So within the next month, you can expect 3 key things. So the ACA token distribution to everyone who is a kind of pending network owner of Acala. ACA token distribution will happen within the next month. Could be sooner, could be towards the end of the month, we'll see. LCDOT as well. So anyone who contributed to the Crowdloan using the liquid Crowdloan DOT option, your LCDOT will also be distributed within the next month. And then the third bullet point here, Betty mentioned the Acala Treasury. This is our essentially protocol controlled DOT that is going to be hosted on chain and controlled by the network participants. This will also go kind of on chain within the next month. on the right here, by the end of Q1 2022, so you notice we're not able to really commit to exact dates, but we expect this should be done within Q1. Token transfers being enabled. So this is different than token distribution. So token distribution means that when you open up your wallet, you will see ACA in your wallet. If you're someone using Polkadot.js or one of these decentralized options, what token transfers means is maybe I could send my ACA to my mom, or I could send ACA to my sister. This means that you can actually do send and receive with ACA. Token transfers also coincide with other kind of providers that want to potentially list ACA. So things like, if you're asking about exchanges, this is the key event to look for is token transfers. This means that tokens can be sent and received. And then NFTs, as part of the Crowdloan campaign, we had one NFT for Crowdloan participants and another one for people who did the Acala quests. You can expect both of these NFTs to also be distributed within Q1 of 2022. I'm going to hand it over to Betty. You can see here, and maybe Josh or Robin can post this link in the chat for you. This is something to bookmark and follow as we go throughout this launch process. This is really nice. We can use this tool to basically constantly be updating the progress of the launch. So if you simply bookmark this page, you'll always have the latest on the launch of Acala. So yeah, you'll find the link in the chat here, and then I'm going to hand it over to Betty to share her screen, and just Betty and Brian will maybe walk through the phases here of the launch, and then and everything to expect with this. So let's see if I can. Yeah, I'll close my screen. There you
go. So is my screen showing up?
Yep, got it.
Okay, cool. I'll try to be a bit brief, just conscious of time. And yeah, so the launch comes into phases, and then we adopt a progressive decentralization approach. So they're kind of organized in that way. And the phase one is basically right now waiting for the Genesis to launch. So that's on the 18th. And then we are just about to release all the distribution data onto this link, this website. I don't think we've kind of checked all the data yet, but we are very close to finishing that process. Then everyone can actually go on there and check how much token that they're getting distributed. And then phase two is once we launch, we'll go through a technical upgrading process to verify technically the network is running smoothly, and then we will start the process of distributing various different type of tokens like LCDOT, and then also distributing ACA tokens to everybody. Yeah, and then most of you would not need to claim any of the tokens. They will just appear in the address that you participate in the Crowdloan. But some of you do need to if you somehow participated through some third-party agency. But I think everything will be clear on the website that whether you need to claim or not. Mostly to do with the terms and conditions that if you didn't sign it, then you will have to sign it again and then claim the tokens. This is the part that it will still be under Sudoku. So that's why transfer is not enabled. Imagine if we distribute a token and then a transfer is enabled and then we still hold a admin key, and that's not a good way to kind of start. So we basically distribute a token and not allow transfers. And then on the third phase where its governance through council with democracy, right? So this is allowing a delegated council to vote for various different type of changes, as well as allowing democracy. So everybody, ACA token holders, can vote for important changes on the network. And then through this process, then one of the most significant voting will be removing the Sudoku. So this is removing the admin control of the network. And beyond this point, everything will have to go through governance, whether it's a council voting or democracy, everybody voting. There's no single person controlling an admin key for anything. And then only after that point, it's safe, decentralized, to enable the token transfer. And then once the token transfer is enabled, then you're pretty, free to go to do whatever. You can transfer the tokens, you can trade it, and do whatever you like. And then there's 3 big components after that to launch the protocols, the primitives that we have, as well as the platform, the EVM that we have. It's intentionally, so the first step is actually enable the primitive protocol. Those are completely in our control. So we can actually do that, I guess, in a very expected sort of time frame. We will release those dates once we get closer to it. It will also go through a vote as well. And then we are intentionally being not explicit about specific pairs, because this time around we have a lot more assets in our disposal. So there will be various type of listing pairs, as well as liquidity pools. I think once we get closer to that, and once the incentive program are more fleshed out, and then we can post those out. And it's likely to be also in sequence as well, rather than a one big bang go as well. And part of that also has a dependency on Polkadot. One thing that's dependent on Polkadot is when Polkadot's cross-chain has become available. Right now, it's only available on Kusama. And once that becomes available on Polkadot, then we can start bring DOT into Acala. That is one of the most important dependencies that we have. Once the DOT is on Acala, then you can start having trading pairs like LCDOT to DOT, also LDOT to DOT, and things like that. And the second dependency is obviously the liquid DOT, like the staking stuff, for enabled by XCM as well. So those are the 2 dependencies that we are waiting. As soon as we know the dates and also the plan, we will also be communicating out to everybody, so anyone can actually kind of anticipate when they can unbound their DOT and bring them to Acala, right? Because the time frame is quite long in Polkadot. It's 28 days for unbounding. So we will try our best to kind of announce early, so everybody will be able to have time to unbound their DOT and then bring the DOT onto Acala to participate in any of the liquidity programs or any of the trading activities that are made available on Acala. So that's that. And then the last bit is actually enabling the EVM as a platform. And then the EVM will also likely to be a phased approach. And then we will probably announce that as we get closer. So for example, at the beginning of the EVM launch, there will be maybe only the bridges will be enabled first, only the assets will be made available. And then the second step might be having smart contracts and open to any of the permissionless deployment on the platform as well. Because mostly because we didn't use any of the copy-paste EVM modules onto our chain. It's a completely brand new built EVM module. So we want to be safe as we launch the platform. But in any case, all of this will already be launched on Karura first before it goes to Acala. So so that's the phase approach. And then last but not least is the full democracy. This is basically taking away any of the still sort of the any of the process. For example, the councils will be elected, and also everything can go through democracy or the election process to be fully kind of decentralized as well. And once we get to this stage, I think the core team will be gradually be more hands-off in many of the aspects, both in terms of development as well as in managing the network. So there will be a transition phase where we will probably expose more and more of the stuff into the community, and hopefully we'll have folks come from the community will collectively kind of store and help manage the chain, as well as participate in development and contribution to the network. Yeah, so that's roughly what it is. I've just unshared, and back to you, Dan.
Cool. That's everything. So I know we're about 2 minutes before the top of the hour. We can probably stay maybe a little bit longer and answer some of these questions. Does that work for you guys, Betty and Brian? Cool.
I do have to jump on the hour. I got a back-to-back meeting. Sorry.
Cool. That should be fine. Brian and I will go at it. So, okay, I'm going to just go through the first question about differentiation. Betty covered that in detail. How can we utilize liquid DOT that was provided to the Crowdloan? What are the techniques? So definitely not going to give any financial advice on this. There's I'm sure a plethora of different strategies that people will take. I'm just going to give a couple examples. So with LCDOT, this is the Crowdloan derivative. This will be accepted as a collateral within the stablecoin facility. So what that means is you could collateralize your LCDOT, which is basically just kind of locking it. And then you would be able to take out essentially a loan of aUSD and use that aUSD for various things. Someone asked about staking LCDOT. The answer to that is no, you can't stake LCDOT, but if you wanted to, you could swap LCDOT for DOT and then stake your DOT and earn on that DOT. But regardless, just understand that there's definitely risk involved in this, and you should definitely understand how LCDOT works before you do any of these more advanced strategies. And also definitely remember, very important, that the LCDOT token that you have is the only way to get back your originally loaned DOT for the Crowdloan. So it's basically your receipt for that DOT that you loaned Acala for the Crowdloan. So make sure that you somehow get that back by the end of the 2 years, because that's how you'll basically redeem that for your DOT that I'm sure you want back. So Betty answered this one in text, but they were asking about the reward ratio of ACA to DOT. So the final ratio was 4.61 ACA for every DOT, and that included the 15% kind of base rewards that we gave, and then of course there was the 2% bonuses that were distributed as well. Let's see. When NFT, already answered that. That's going to be within the first quarter of Q1 2022. How will you attract institutional investors to offer them their customers maybe DeFi yield and so on? So Betty also covered this, but this relates to what we were talking about with Acala being, of course, built for DeFi first people, so DeFi users, blockchain projects building on Acala. But there's also this other arm where we're building this DeFi backend for fintech companies. We mentioned Current as an example of one that's being built as we speak and will launch sometime in the near future. This is basically providing a DeFi backend or DeFi yield for users in the Web2 or fintech world. So Current is actually an app with about 3 million customers in the US, and they're using it right now on their phones for a savings account, probably 0.5%. But when Acala integrates with Current, what will happen is a new product will be introduced, and that will probably provide much higher return, maybe just for example, 3% or 4%. This allows these users to enjoy this yield that's actually in the back end coming from Acala without ever having to use things like MetaMask or public and private keys. So it's basically providing a back end for DeFi yield for fintechs. This will continue to grow over time as we integrate with more and more fintechs. And Betty had to leave, so thanks, Betty. We'll keep answering questions and probably wrap up in the next maybe 5-10 minutes. Okay. There's some questions about the listing. I mentioned this earlier, but any exchange related things will come along the same timeline as token transfers that I mentioned. So token transfers allow ACA to go from one wallet to another, and that's required for anyone to list the token. So
some people.
Go ahead.
Yeah, some people are asking about the LCDOT price and the redeem mechanism. Probably let me explain it a bit more again. So firstly, well, we will have the trading pairs between LCDOTs with LDOTs. But the price of LCDOT is purely determined by the market. So, well, it's basically how much people. It is probably will be sold at a discount initially. So when you contribute for the Crowdloan, you contribute $1, then you receive one LCDOT back, and then this LCDOT can redeem a dot in 2 years time. So it's very so if you want to convert this LCDOT to dot right now, then it's very likely you need to sell it at a discount. Then the exact price obviously is determined by market, depending on how many people want to sell it and how many people want to buy it. And then, like for example, if we sold at a discount that's big enough, and then buying those, it's kind of like dot in the future. Then you buying those dot in the future, we say like 50% discount. Well, I would be very happy to buy that, knowing that those things will become a real dot after 2 years, and the 50% discount is a very good price. But again, that's you're not going to be able to do staking. It's not a real dot. So there are some difference between that. So yeah, we cannot. We don't really have a good idea of what price will be. But if you can, for example, using some method strategies to evaluate those market conditions, and then you might be able to figure out some numbers yourself, and then see if they're matching to the market price. And then after 2 years time, you will always be able to redeem one LCDOT to one dot, no matter what price on the trading pair it is. So by that time, I really will be expecting when closer to the 2 years time, the price difference between LCDOT and dot will be become closer and closer. Eventually, it will become 1-to-1 on any trading pairs. Because if we sell at any discounts, then there's arbitrage opportunities, and we'll probably evaluate some strategy when closer to that time. Because at that time, then LCDOT to dot trading pair will become not making a lot of sense. So there will be some mechanisms to unwind those trading pairs, and then people will be just withdraw the LP and get all the dots back.
Yeah, so just to add, people in the chat are saying LC dot equals dot. That's not true. So LC dot is a receipt. It will equal 1 dot in 2 years. So that's the reason why there's probably going to be a little bit of a price difference between 1 dot, because just think about it. Would you sell someone your dot for an LC dot that won't be worth a dot for another 2 years? The answer is probably no. But what Brian was explaining is that LC dot will 100% equal 1 dot in 2 years. So the day that the parachain slot ends, that LC dot will equal exactly 1 dot. So on that day, you can almost bet that the price will be almost exactly the same, because it's 1 for 1. But now when we launch, there's still about 2 years until that LC dot equals 1 dot. So it doesn't make sense for it to be the same value. So hopefully that helps. Let's see. Brian, someone's asking about the choice of the stablecoin mechanism and how we kind of thought about that versus other models.
Yeah, so the question is, why did you choose DAI as a stablecoin? So I'm not exactly sure I understand the question. It's because we're not choosing DAI as a stablecoin, but we are using the similar mechanisms of DAI. One of the concern is that it's not decentralized. The asker is saying, it's not decentralized stablecoin because it's partially backed by Tether. Again, which is not exactly true, but DAI is partially backed by USDC. And so for us, it will be up to our governors as well as the financial councils to decide if we would like to have our KUSD or aUSD to be backed by centralized issued stablecoin. So so this is something that we hope we don't need to do that. But again, if there is a demand, especially for Kura, is the experimental network. So we could be potentially consider that as an option if there is actually demand to do that. And we'll see if it works or not. If it doesn't work, well, we're just not going to do it for the aUSD.
Great. Let's see if I can find a couple more. Acala Ambassador Program, they're asking, will it be available in the next round? I'm not sure what that means, but the Acala Ambassador Program is still very much up and running. So Robin is the person on our team who's kind of built and leading that effort. So anyone who wants to be kind of a part of the project, whether you're a developer, a content creator, someone who wants to help moderate all of our chat channels, there's a variety of things that you can do to get involved. Definitely, I think the easiest, somebody can provide a link here, or even just Google the Acala Ambassador Program and you can apply. And we do, personal onboarding. So you'll meet Robin, she'll explain how the program works. You'll meet some other ambassadors very early on in the process. And then we definitely really appreciate it and take care of all the ambassadors who are kind of along for the ride. All right.
So someone is asking, how is a value determined at launch? Well, so obviously determined, as any token launch is determined by the market. So where we do have plan to launch in, for example, ACA to DOT trading pairs. And then if you have participated the Acala Swap, you will know when we launch a trading pair, there is a bootstrapping period. So there's a period where the trading is not disabled, but people can add liquidity. And then you can potentially also let the liquidity only on single side, so you can only add DOT or only add ACA, for example. But once you add, you cannot get it back. So you need to obviously think through like determine if you want to only add single pair or add two pairs. And then the final price of the launching price will be determined at end of the bootstrapping period. So then everyone adding liquidity at that time will basically be traded at the final price. And then there will be the opening price for the DEX. Obviously, for centralized exchange listing, that will be something different, but it's totally up to the exchanges to determine what will be the starting price.
Awesome. I think that's about it. The last question that I think we should end on is, and Brian, you can add to this too, is just somebody is asking, what's the longer term vision for Acala? They mentioned 5 years, but even like 3 years. So maybe you picked up on this throughout this presentation on where we're headed. But a couple of different things on that question. So first, this is going to go in phases, just like the launch is going in phases. The Acala kind of life cycle of progression is also going to go in phases. So first and foremost, Acala was built as the kind of DeFi and liquidity hub to serve the Polkadot ecosystem. This is kind of our near-term goal. So the aUSD stablecoin, we expect to be kind of the de facto stablecoin used by every dApp on every parachain in the Polkadot ecosystem. So fulfilling a huge need, which is the need for a stablecoin for almost any application being built in this Web3 environment. In addition to becoming this hub of DOT assets like DOT and Liquid DOT and LCDOT and others, in the more near to midterm, we expect our kind of interactions to go not only just cross parachains within the Polkadot ecosystem, but to start going external. So if you start thinking about aUSD or LDOT, exporting these tokens to other ecosystems. So if you can imagine Solana and Terra and Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche, all these ecosystems also have a need for stablecoins, also have a need for yield-bearing assets like LDOT. So this is kind of what to expect, is a lot more collaborations, not only within the Polkadot ecosystem, but outside the Polkadot ecosystem, kind of going international, if you want to think about it that way. On the other side, in addition to kind of bootstrapping our whole network with everything that I just mentioned, is the fintech aspect. So going into fintech, providing this product or API for Current, and then expanding that out to a huge variety of other fintech companies, providing essentially a yield engine to bring DeFi to fintech. So this is yield earned on things like LDOT. So DOT staking is around 12 to 15%. We'll be pulling from that. There will be other kind of stablecoin or stable asset protocols. One that we've already given a grant to, which is a team called Tapio, building on Acala, and they're building Taiga on Kusama, on Karura, in the Kusama ecosystem. There will be another use for stablecoins there and earning on stablecoins. So there will be a kind of a variety of ways that we'll be combining this yield together and packaging it to provide DeFi yield to fintech companies, so they can basically earn on their customer funds and help kind of increase or improve the financial outcomes for their customers in Web 2. Brian, I don't know if you want to expand on that at all, maybe from a technical perspective, or any other thoughts you might have on where we're headed in the next few years.
Yeah, from a technical point of view, we definitely want to build long-term sustainable blockchains. So we spend a lot of time trying to make sure, by including the token economics, the self-proof. So when was found, the treasury is that we want to make sure the blockchain itself in the long term can run by itself. That is also mentioned to the version of Polkadot. Polkadot is trying to build a meta system that it itself can evolve. So if the governance process can help the shaping the directions of the network. So we're also doing a similar thing. So we have a clear version in the short to mid terms, but in the very, very long term, well, it is also not just us to point to the direction. It's also the governance process, like deciding the future of the network.
Awesome. So everybody who's still here, it's been about an hour and 15 minutes. So we really appreciate the patience and the engagement and being here and learning more about the launch. Just to quickly recap, so we're launching Acala's mainnet on Saturday. Depending on where you are in the world, it'll be around Saturday. We'll definitely be communicating that out. And then this will be posted on YouTube, and you can go back and watch if you want to kind of go back and see other things we mentioned about what to expect with the launch, some of the dependencies on Polkadot, and the phases that we'll kind of be seeing as we roll out Acala to the community. So thanks to everybody who has supported us along the way. I know we've got a lot of network owners on the presentation today, waiting anxiously for Acala to launch. I know I am as well, and definitely just looking forward to going through this process with you guys. Be aware that we'll be keeping you updated along the way too. So we'll be doing calls in our Discord, probably Twitter Spaces, just so that everyone's being communicated with and know exactly what's happening. And never hesitate to ask us questions. Come into our Discord, ask the team, what's the latest, what's the status. Feel free to ask whatever's on your mind. So I'm going to end it there. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you soon. And if we don't see you again before the end of the year, have a great new year. Have a great holiday. And